Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Arjuna Costa, and I'm excited for a conversation we have coming up about the future of that humble little corner store that we all know so well. These stores are the center of community. The owner has a smile on his face and knows you by name, and often has just what you need when you stop by. What we don't know is that this represents a $900 billion retail opportunity worldwide. At Flourish, we're committed to helping these little micro entrepreneurs thrive with a combination of technology, innovation, and better financial services. I will be joined shortly by 4 amazing entrepreneurs from our portfolio to discuss a study we recently released. And some of the findings of that study might surprise you. Let's set the stage with a short video.
We're told a story that major retailers and one-click buying are pushing the corner shop into bankruptcy and irrelevance. Fact is, the opposite is true. The corner shop is a worldwide, untapped powerhouse.
The Walmarts and the Walgreens of Egypt only represent 10% of the business, right? And they've been stagnant actually for the last 10 years, not gaining a single percentage point to these mom and pop shops.
I still think these small merchants like warungs are actually still the powerhouse house of Indonesia.
It's impossible for a big chain like Walmart to give the same contact and relation that we have at a corner store.
Corner shops make up as much as 90% of retail trade in some countries, and worldwide represent an opportunity of a $900+ billion industry. The 2022 Flourish Digitizing the Corner Shop research report shows that digital platforms and embedded finance offerings could unlock 60 to 100% increases in corner shop earnings. These corner shops are cornerstones of neighborhoods, meeting the daily needs of customers, offering credit and other services. Merchants play many roles.
From morning to night, they're playing everything. They're playing security, accounting, housekeeping, customer service, definitely, and entrepreneurs.
Corner shops are local gathering places where customers buy what they need and increasingly even pay their bills.
Because of the trust, right? By the simple act of purchasing some things over and over again, you have a very nuanced understanding of what our local consumer needs.
Yet they've been overlooked by analysts, investors, and bankers, and underserved.
But once we go deeper and we give them more solutions, it's life-changing for them, because most of the time they would never get access to what we're giving.
The 2022 Flourish Research Report, Digitizing the Corner Shop, found that a majority of corner shops are now turning to digital apps to help them run their businesses and expect to increase their usage. Yet most still rely on paper and pencil.
It's a mess on financial side. It's very challenging for us. How can I shift that mindset to make them think as their own store as a business, to run as a business?
Most of the grocery stores actually do not make any money. The point is they don't know they're not making money, right? Because they are selling this inventory, money is coming to them. They don't know if that is money that is profit or just for the inventory they sold.
These Flourish portfolio companies, empowering corner shop owners, offer merchants easy-to-use and adopt apps and digital platforms to buy inventory, manage and pay staff, sell products, finance growth through credit, even offer storage and reliable fast delivery.
Our rough estimate is that we have increased the earnings of these stores by roughly 30%.
In addition to also giving them better pricing, we give them a larger variety of choices.
We get them credit at a better rate of interest, and these two things helps increase income.
The research shows that today's increasingly digitized merchants are seeing new opportunities for their stores, their customers, and themselves.
We make it so visual so that they understand that this looks like a case of Pepsi, right? This looks like a bag of rice. So they see a number, they see a picture, they understand that this is the checkout button, and we make it quite visual for them. so that they can, at the end of the day, use the technology even if they cannot read and write.
So clearly, the corner shop's here to stay, but we also recognize that there's plenty of room to make things better. Let's bring in our panelists who are doing just that and dive deeper. Following the sun from east to west, we have Afif Zaman, the co-founder and CEO of ShopUp in Bangladesh, Shruti, the co-founder and CEO of ApnaKlub in India, Bilal Megharbel, the co-founder and CEO of MaxAB in Egypt, and Guilherme Bonifacio, the co-founder and COO of Merce Barrio in Brazil. Welcome, everyone. As we saw in the video, there's a range of opportunities to help these stores. Before we jump into the conversation, I'd like to take a second to organize those opportunities and the challenges that the shopkeepers face into a framework that touches on the key functions that they fulfill. You are all working to help them buy better. In other words, get the right goods at a fair price in a timely fashion. You're helping them manage their store operations better, do some bookkeeping at a basic level, manage their people, manage their stock and inventory, just run a tighter operation. We can help them sell better. How do you connect with your customers and cater to their needs in a more timely fashion? And cutting across all of this is the finance piece. Can they accept digital payments? Can they get basic credit? Can we open a simple business banking account for them? Help them think about their money in a more business-like fashion. And of course, can we ensure that little store and all the goods that are there in it? Against that framework, I'd love for you to just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what your companies do. Maybe we start from west to east this time. Guilherme in Brazil.
Hi, Arjuna. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and share the stage with Merce do Bairro, peers from other geographies. Well, the list of pains of our clients is complex, like you said, but I could highlight three major problems here. One is working capital, two is procurement, and three, automation tools. Remember that our client is very informal. They use pen and paper to manage their business. So our e-commerce and credit solutions offer them the convenience they need to better manage their business and have more time to spend with their customers, employees, and families. And we are extremely excited for what we're seeing here.
Thanks, Guilherme. Bilal?
Thank you guys for having me here, and very excited to be among this group of very talented individuals that are solving similar problems in different markets. At MaxAB, we started as a B2B e-commerce platform to connect these mom and pop shops directly to the manufacturers and eliminating the inefficiencies in the supply chain. And as you mentioned, eventually we ventured into financial services where we offer them the ability to do bill aggregation, bill payments, and get access to limited amount of credit as well that helps them stock better and serve these neighborhoods better.
Thanks, Bilal. Shruti.
Hi, everyone. Very glad to be sharing stage with everyone. So I'm, as Arjun has mentioned, I'm Shruti. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of ApnaKlub. I work in India, right? In India, we have $100 billion FMCG consumption industry and almost 10 million small and medium enterprises, whom we call very fondly Kirana stores, 10 million stores, and almost 500,000 intermediaries make up the majority of the supply chain for this market, right? India is one of the most fragmented industries of its kind in the world, right? So the majority, almost 85% of India's consumption is happening through the small store. ApnaKlub works with them to help them buy better, get access to credit, and build in automation tools for sales. On average, any partner who signs up with us earns about 40 to 50% greater income on the goods that they procure and sell through us. And this number is life-changing for the families involved.
Wow. Thank you, Shruti. Afif?
Hey guys, excited to be here. So at ShopUp, what we're building is a full stack B2B commerce platform for these small neighborhood mom and pop shops. So we have three core components, as we call them stacks. The first one is a logistics network. So we have the largest logistics network in Bangladesh, which helps us reach the most remotest of these small shops with the most efficient price and reliability. On top of that, the second stack is basically the B2B commerce app itself. So we connect farmers, manufacturers, importers, and producers with these small shops. So on average, a small shop will have 200 customers in a day, but they'll have to manage like 30 different suppliers in that day itself, right? So it's a very fragmented process for them. So we simplify that by bringing everything in the same platform. And the final stack on top of that is the embedded finance stack. So we have a B2B payments wallet and a B2B BNPL product, which is basically is a credit product for them. So only 1 out of 10 of these small shops will have access to banks or use bank to actually do their normal upstream transactions, right? So we are basically solving that problem through this. So combining these three is basically what we call a full stack B2B commerce platform for these neighborhood mom and pop shops.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone. Clearly, lots of innovation, lots of creative business model changes, serving a segment of the population that has been ignored both by the banks and the large FMCG companies across your different markets. Shruti, you've noted just how critical a role these kiranas play, the Indian corner stores play in the local economy, in particular in the smaller cities where you operate in India. The surveys we just completed showed that nearly 90% of the customer base agrees with you, right? 88% said they shop at these corner stores. Something like an astonishing 84% increased their use of the corner store during the pandemic, right? So we're all sitting here thinking everybody's going e-commerce. 84% of your population is saying, no, we use the store more. And all of them said they plan to use it at that same level or even more going forward. Counter to the trends we're all thinking about with big box retail and e-commerce just taking over. Talk a little bit more about, the role of these stores in the community and how you see it playing out in the future.
Thanks, Arjun. When we think about the future of retail, I think there's a popular misconception that people have that the world is, moving towards bigger and, like decentralized in the way of like, a big e-commerce player owning all of the customers. The truth is any good retail setup does three things, right? It has an assortment of goods that you want. It gets them to you in the shortest time possible. And it hopefully helps you pay for them in the manner that's most suitable for you and your monetary needs, right? Now, when I think about the Indian corner store, right, they are actually doing two of these three things much better than any e-commerce store ever can, right? So if you think about it, they already have paid down real estate, right? So we mentioned at the beginning, right, that the corner store guy has the smile on his face. He also owns the shop that he's standing in or she is standing in, right? That real estate is paid down. That rent is like paid for. Capital, human capital labor is again entrepreneurial in nature. Again, this person can get goods to you and in your hands within like 5 to 10 minutes of you thinking of a need, right? They are the original dark store. So first, that logistics layer and that speed of delivery to you is unmatchable. Second, credit, right? So 1 in 3 customers of the Indian Kirana store is buying on credit from them. And these are customers who don't have, regular banking accounts. They don't have the kind of credit scores that are let bank lend money to them. And almost no financial body can loan people money for eating, right? But Kirana stores maintain this important monetary function for them. They are running what they call khatas, right? So they have like a monthly credit and they're running these for their customers. If anything, where do they lose out, right? Versus the e-commerce models of today on the long tail and assortment of goods. And that's why I think companies like us, MaxAB, ShopUp, and Merce come in, right? We are helping all of the corner stores improve the assortment in there. We are helping them to understand what to stack and show. We are helping them with getting these goods to them in a faster way so that every customer of theirs goes away satisfied. And that is why, right? My belief is that they are such an important omnipresent, low-cost channel. Every FMCG executive will tell you the cost of distributing through a Kirana store is almost half of like distributing through a modern store, right? this fantastic channel is becoming the innovation layer upon which we make distribution better, we make customer satisfaction better, and we do this while leveraging the traditional setup. So I don't think the future is e-commerce. I think the future is, combined commerce, kirana stores, and a great assortment that many people, including us, sell through them.
I like that, combined commerce. Bilal, you're smiling. Is combined commerce the future in Egypt?
It is. I mean, even when you look at the West, they call it omni-channel, right? But as Shorty mentioned, the grocery stores are here to stay. In Egypt, they represent 90% of the business of the groceries being sold. There is a grocery store for every 250 people, right? So he can know literally every single customer by name. And that's why he's able to credit score themselves and offer them loans as well. So unlike what common wisdom in the West would say, the retail market, at least in our part of the world, is here to stay. It haven't lost a single market share point to the modern trade or the organized trade. And to understand that, you have to understand fundamentally how our countries are built and how this guy is more than just a grocery store. He is a community leader, and our job is to make him an even stronger community leader, to offer more services than just groceries. And building example on what Afif have launched in Bangladesh is inspired us to actually launch similar services and allowing them to deliver parcels to the e-commerce businesses as well, which is something that they have never done before. But we figured out he knows every neighborhood better than any delivery guy. He can be the best guy to deliver these parcels. And we believe that his role in the community will only increase from here, not decrease, actually.
Right. Combined commerce, the center of community, the local banker, Shruti, that's helping the customers and the community smooth cash flow, buy a sack of rice when they need it and they may not have the money, settle at the end of the month. Really central to how we live, and may not be in the center of the urban areas like some of us do, but as you get out into the rest of the countries. I'd like to switch gears a little bit. Guilherme, in your intro, you created this beautiful image of a business run on pen and paper. Now, we're all on Zoom. We barely touch pen and paper. How do you bring technology to these people? Now, I know that they probably use tech in their personal lives all the time, right? They're WhatsApping their friends all the time. If it's a slow afternoon of business, they're probably watching a YouTube video or something to pass the time. But they haven't really adopted it for their business. How do you get that behavior change? Because that's hard. What are you seeing in Brazil?
Well, I totally agree with you, Arjuna. It's a matter of trust. In order for us to be successful in making this transition work, we need to be trustable. So that's what we are trying to build here. By offering good goods in a fair price with working capital for them, with the possibility to buy now and pay later. It's what we're doing here is building trust. And the second stage is to show them the opportunities that come with sharing their data, which is really tough for them. They like I said before, they manage their business using pen and paper. And every time that you talk about sharing data, they start to being concerned about that. And it's normal, in our countries, they are afraid of the government, afraid of taxes, afraid of everything. They can't trust anyone. So the point here is how we explain them the opportunities that come with this data. And they are starting to see that because they can pay lower interest rates by sharing data. They can get access to better products by sharing data. They can get discounts by sharing data. That's the opportunity we see. And that's what we are trying to build here, trust.
That's powerful. That idea that you want to get them to trust you and you want them to to trust a digital interface rather than the person they're used to seeing all the time. Bilal, in the video, you talked about the user experience and how to design something that's simple and intuitive, right? That image of the picture of the Pepsi can and pressing a button and suddenly the Pepsi can shows up at their doorstep. How do you build technology for this segment? And how do you build trust and with the technology, right? That Guilherme was just talking about.
So basically, to understand, to build a proper technology that caters for this merchant's needs, you have to understand how he thinks, right? And you have to acknowledge that this is not your typical B2B customer, right? So we're always named as a B2B e-commerce platform. We're neither B2C or B2B. I call our business B2R, brand to retail or business to retail, right? Because the retailer is pretty much a glorified customer. He's just a big customer, right? But at the end of the day, he's not a business with departments. He runs his store himself, right? So he does procurement, he does shelving, he does the accounting, he does the cleaning, and he does the customer service, right? So you have to think of all of this and think, how do you make his life easy to be able to function as 5 people would function, example, in a modern trade, right? And you start bottom up. You shadow him, you see how he acts, and you deliver to him a product and a piece of technology that allows him to do all these things easily. And as I mentioned, we do have some customers that do not know how to read and write, yet are able to use our technology because it's intuitive and it was built with them in mind, thinking how they think, right? So the typical cart, as an example, doesn't function like a B2C cart. The way our merchants use the cart is that instead of writing in paper what's missing in their shop, they add these to their carts and then they check out, right? So by iterations, we figured out that this is how we started it as a normal B2C checkout cart. And then after we've seen how the customers use it, which is typically 6 to 7 days till they check out, right? And this is how long it takes them to actually add items, because they use it as a quasi ERP, if I may call it, right? And then you make this an even simpler way for them to actually change the cart as a mini ERP so that they can run their stores even better.
That's for me, just flipping how one would think about it, right? They're using the cart to keep a running list
of the items they're missing.
Of what they're missing, as opposed to worrying about the fact that there's cart abandonment, which is what every other e-commerce company would look at and say, oh my God, there's stuff in this cart that's never getting checked out. You're actually flipping it and saying, okay, what I'm building is intuitively a way for them to keep a list of what they're running out of. And when they're ready, they'll just hit buy and it shows up. Bilal, that's fascinating. Shruti, Afif, how are you thinking about sort of incorporating technology, maybe in counterintuitive ways, but actually in a way that matches the user needs and the patterns of behavior of these shopkeepers?
So just a small example, right, about like how the B2B or, the SME customer differs from the B2C customer. So for example, like let's say if you were to go on a website, right, and you buy toothpaste, the algorithm should naturally suggest to you, why don't you also buy a toothbrush, or, why don't you buy something that comes after that? In our case, what we do is that, if you're buying toothpaste, we show you, here are these 5 other brands, right? And here are the margins you can make on them. And why don't you add them to your cart, right? So where we think the technology can really make a lot of difference to the lives of these shopkeepers today, it's kind of like in the magic of, behind the shop, right? So there's like a front of the shop. And I think when we think about digitization, all of us like kind of like, instinctively think about how do you connect the shopkeeper to their audience, right? How do you build them like a digital app? And I think that's very important and its time is coming. But even before that, I think like the back of the shop is where a lot of the magic can already happen, right? So suggesting to them the right things to buy. So if you're buying, let's say, X brand toothpaste, why don't you also buy these 5 other things? Why don't we start to build like seller tools for them? So trending in your area, trending in your category, deals you cannot miss, stock out information. So these are things that we've really spent a lot of time on. And while there's a perception, right, that like a lot of these shopkeepers might not welcome digitization, or that they don't use apps to, like order so much, in our, in our experience, it's actually been the opposite. We have like 70-80% of like reorders coming entirely, like through the app. We have like people like, checking out items at like 3 a.m. Customer calls, like coming at like 4 a.m. and asking, hey, can you do a price comparison for me, right? So yeah, so by the way, there's a lot of calling, there's a lot of prompts for, can you talk to me and help me, right? But they're asking these questions, which are very typical of us. Help me price compare, help me discover more, help me like, easily search with my voice. So as technology is kind of like, building like for a world that's not like, just like, dependent on like the written word, I think we are finding it easier and easier to build an app that really caters to our shopkeeper community.
So you've got to be on 24/7. They're calling you at 3 a.m. because that's, as a small entrepreneur, that's on their mind. And you've got to be able to be responsive. I think it comes back to, Guilherme, the point you made around trust, right? How do you build that trusted relationship? And then how do you use the technology in an intuitive way to make your operations more efficient? Afif, anything to add on this technology adoption, comfort with technology, design of technology point?
Yeah, so I think I can share one point. So I think one of the learnings that we had is that quite often the things that we take for granted are actually the main blockers. So our first version of the app was struggling a lot in terms of, getting self-service orders. And when we tried to understand what happened, we realized that the keyboard itself was the issue, right? So if you really think about it, like the QWERTY keyboard for someone who is just using the internet for the first time is a very complex new thing, right? It's natural for us because we've been using laptops and keyboards for like decades. So it's a natural version of that QWERTY keyboard in the smartphone. But for a retailer whose first internet device is that smartphone, that QWERTY, like it's not even ABCD, right? So it's a new language, it's a foreign language, and it's not even ABCD, it's QWERTY, it's very complicated. Bangla itself also was a very complicated keyboard for them to use. So they ended up not using it. They will just browse it and then call someone at our office to actually help them place the order. Then we acquired this company with this amazing sharp engineers. We're building a solution to solve this exact problem. So what they've done is that instead of using the keyboard, you can just say the words. Like you want to buy, let's say, rice, chal, which is the Bangla word for that. Just say chal and sort all the rice products in the same screen for you. You can take a picture of a Unilever soap and it will basically sort all the Unilever products for you, right? And you can also write like chal, which is, and it will sort all those products for you. And then conversion went through the roof. So within 2-3 seconds, they could communicate with the app, and that solves a very fundamental problem, which we initially took for granted. So I think solving these fundamental problems, rethinking them, like things we take for granted, is very, very much key if you want to solve technology for these new group of users.
Wow, for the last 20 years or so, we've been talking about this idea of solving emerging markets technology problems leads to leapfrogging. You now have voice to image e-commerce search capabilities, right? Say rice and it sort of the image of rice pops up, press a button and you're done. Really cool. Your tech teams, do they enjoy building for this type of solution? Anyone?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
Yeah. So,
okay, finish
yeah.
That shooting.
Sure, just one quick one. So our tech team is actually across 2 different countries. So we have an engineering team in India and also in Bangladesh. So quite often what we have seen is that different perspective helps a lot. So a lot of things the Bangladeshi engineers would take for granted or our product team will take for granted, which will get a different perspective from the engineering or the product team from India, and the vice versa as well. So I think that's one of the things that we have learned. Like diversity is difficult, but it's very important if you want to solve core problems.
And if I may add, is the problem everybody here is solving is so original to our countries. It's not like we've taken something which was usually what's happening in tech innovation in the region and localize it. This actually problem and the solution is original to our countries. And this is what gets engineers super excited about solving this problem.
Correct. And of course, you guys are such inspiring leaders. I want to work for you. Let's talk for a minute about, so we've talked about the centrality of these stores. We've talked about how You're building these creative technology solutions for them. What about the impact? Bilal, you talked in the video about the impact on shopkeeper earnings. Shruti, you talked about the impact from reducing their cost of borrowings. Let's talk about how much potential we actually have to transform the lives of these small shopkeepers and their families. Bilal, do you want to lead us off?
Sure. So basically, when it comes to impact, as you know, historically, this supply chain have been extremely segmented and multi-layered, right? There was 3-4 layers of middlemen, right? And this created unlimited or very limited, visibility for both the brands and the shopkeepers. And this actually limitation in visibility causes them not to stock properly and the middlemen not to price properly and so on and so forth. So just by allowing this visibility through the supply chain, it brought the entire cost of distribution end to end down, right? And we were able to ship way more inventory out of a similar warehouse that, let's say, used to ship $1 million worth of inventory. Now it's shipping $3 million because it operates on a robust technology solution, right? So in essence, what this happens is it translates into incremental bottom line to these merchants, and they are able to price cheaper for the people of their neighborhoods. And now they're able to even offer better quality goods at a similar price. So the impact is even felt by the consumers in these neighborhoods, not just the merchants themselves. And it became way easier for somebody to open a shop because now he does not require that much capital, because he can order with no minimum order quantity on demand instead of having to close his shop and go to the wholesale market and buy in bulk and hence require more capital to operate his store.
Impact on multiple levels, Bilal. You talk not just about the financial earnings to the store, you're talking about the savings that are passed on to the end customer and the time savings. That was the last point you made, which, Guilherme, I think you also made, which is they get to spend more time with their families if they can just click a button and buy the goods they need. Shruti, how are you doing this, and what impact are you seeing in India?
Sure. So I think we see impact across two distinct kind of product categories. One is, of course, the core kind of procurement and distribution system, which Bilal has actually laid out pretty well, right? Just cutting out intermediaries on the brand side, having the truck fully packed with the right set of goods, having the warehouses turning over 3 times a month instead of once a month. These lead up to a lot of freeing up of cash and margins. These margins get passed on to our shop owners directly, right? So that's one part of it, and that's where we see the incomes start to improve from get go. The second part of it is actually in cash flow. The shop really lives on cash flow, right? The way I think a lot of shopkeepers in India are operating is that they start off with 10 rupees worth of goods in the morning, and at the end of the night they should have 12 rupees in that till, right? Then 10 rupees goes back into the goods, 2 rupees goes essentially into kind of running the family. Obviously not real numbers, but that's the sense of it. Now what happens is that their sense of cash is a lot to do with turnaround and waiting time. And so what happens sometimes, I honestly feel, is they don't understand what is the interest rate that they are being asked to pay. So we have had people who are essentially paying 45 to 50% annualized interest for very fast moving goods essentially. And so when we come into them and we are able to organize that credit, right, we're immediately cutting off half of it, right? So we're offering credit to them at 18%, 24%, very safe bets, right? So input credit, buy now, pay later lines, we know they're good for it. We've seen really low default rates. Even with all of these great signals and indicators, their informal credit was at this 50% mark, right? So they kind of immediately you can bring that down and give them very good credit. And that to me has been kind of the major two ways in which we've been able to make an impact on their lives. The third and a little bit underappreciated thing is actually there's so much impact in being able to buy anytime, anywhere. I think as consumers, we're very used to this idea, just, like you can pick up Amazon or Flipkart and order anything at any point. The shopkeeper is really busy, like from like morning to like night. And that is why they love talking to us only in the afternoons or, in the late evenings. But they can't, or they couldn't work with their local like distributors and wholesalers in that way. They had to interrupt a business day. They had to shut shop for a while. They have to figure out, cash in the middle of the day. A lot of times, payments will come in and there won't be cash in the till, right? These are not errors of like them not being able to pay. These are not errors of them not having, like organization in their lives. It's the problem that their, like demand and supply, like chains are not like meeting. And that's where I think we've really been able to help them. You can order anywhere, anytime on ApnaKlub. You get credit, kind of like built in as a payment option. You don't have to go anywhere like from a shop. We come and deliver to you. And I think a lot of these like very simple things actually means that the quality of life has really improved. Their anxiety as a shop owner has decreased. And you can see that reflected, in like the survey numbers that we run, right? So people like to work with us because 1, better pricing for the procurement. 2, much better credit. And 3, a better quality of life and ease of, running your small business. That's how we think we've really tried to boil it down.
That's terrific, Shruti. So I've spent the last 25 years trying to solve this financial inclusion problem for small shopkeepers. And most of that time, in hindsight, talking to the 4 of you was wasted, right? I would stand in front of these stores and try and count the number of people going in and out and how much are they buying? And okay, so what's the turnover? If that's what happens in an hour that I'm standing there, what happens in a day? Just trying to get data. I think if you mentioned 1 out of 10 probably uses a bank. Now, from what it sounds like with your innovations, you started with a tech, like almost a B2B commerce platform to help them buy better, sell better. But you're seamlessly embedding these financial services as part of that. Shruti, you already let us off with the credit. Maybe, Afif, you can talk about how ShopUp is doing this.
Sure. I think one of the most brilliant part of these models is that you can embed without adding any distribution cost, right? So there's always a retailer who we have already acquired and we're servicing on a weekly basis, which basically means they're already generating money for the model. So if you can embed further products on top of that, that basically can be done in a very cheap manner, which in turn will mean that for the retailers, all the access will be much less expensive from the traditional sources. So I think the most brilliant point is you can convert and cost of capital, which generally is calculated at an annual level, and you can convert that to a weekly cycle of product, right? So, for example, if you have a loan product that charges 25% annually, if you may embed that in a product that sells weekly, it basically becomes 0.5% every week. Now, a retailer will make a 10% margin. For them to pay 0.5% is almost nothing because they're earning more, right? So what we've done is basically we have brought in lenders to participate here. Instead of using their existing channel, which was very expensive, they could embed their product here. And we basically have scaled that product quite seamlessly so far. Default rates are extremely low compared to even the traditional portfolio, which was very expensive to monitor at a daily level as well. So we're really excited about this. But I think one of the other things that we are thinking now is going forward, why not these small businesses also extend financial services product to their community, right? So the same way they're actually selling physical products now, in future, instead of them being less relevant, I think they will be more relevant because they will be bringing in more financial services product to their community. So if you can embed those products in for these small sellers to also sell, I think the future will basically be much more relevant with these small names and mom-and-pop shops.
Wow, that's exciting. Okay. You talked about creating trust and actually the financial services portion of your offering, helping create that trust. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. For me or
sorry, Guilherme?
Yeah. Well, the point here is to bring education for the shopkeepers, Well, they need to understand the opportunities behind that data that I mentioned before. And the point is how to educate them, to use the automation tools, to use the systems that we want to provide. And this technology must be used, easy to use, of course. That's our main goal and our main challenge here, I believe, making things easier for them, because, they don't have a large department of people, to, for example, install an ERP. They don't have people to help them buying. They don't have people to help them, looking for products inside the inventory, for example. So they manage their business by themselves with the aid of their families. So when you teach and when you educate these small shopkeepers and they understand what's behind, then the transformation starts to happen. And we are very happy to see this happening here in Brazil.
Great. Bilal, what are you seeing in Egypt? And maybe you want to pick up on the two levels that you alluded to, and Afif did too, which is you bringing the store's financial services, and then eventually the stores acting as mini financial service providers to their customer base.
Yes. So basically, what we're seeing very similar things. I guess the way we approached financial services was not to actually start with credit. We actually started by offering bill payments service, right, which allows us to actually predict the traffic on the store even better than just the inventory they're buying, and gave the merchant an extra way to make money and us an extra data point to start credit scoring these merchants, right?
So let me stop you for a second, Bilal. I need to pay my electricity bill. Rather than going to the electricity company, I can come to the little corner store in Cairo or Alexandria, give them the money, they facilitate the bill payment. Is that?
Exactly. Because again, unlike the vast majority of the world, the people of these neighborhoods do not have cards. So the merchant doesn't want card acceptance because the customers don't have that. But what we allowed him to do is to do these transactions, as you mentioned, on the consumer behalf, right? So he tops up his wallet with us, and then you want to pay your electricity bill, you want to pay your telecom bill, and so on and so forth. You can come and do it as close as possible to you, which is usually the merchant, right? And this also have given us access to data on the consumers as well, so that we can eventually leverage what Afif just mentioned and extend credit to them as well, based on data as well, right? Now, to be honest, the thing that we always have to be careful with when it comes to credit is we believe that the most evil thing to do is to give credit to people that don't understand how to use it, right? So basically, we start building this step by step, very short-term credit, right? And then credit only on these goods, because this is how we're going to make money, right? And so on and so forth, and scale that up till our customers are very aware of how to better utilize the credit lines that we are giving them.
Okay, so two really important things coming up, right? Trust, which a number of you have touched on, and Bilal, you're bringing up this idea of responsibility, right? How do you build a business model that's responsible, that works for both you, the provider, and for your customers? Shruti, you're nodding. Are these the similar sorts of things you're embedding in the DNA of ApnaKlub as you're building the credit portion of the business and the financial services portion of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And, also picking up some ideas for future, product roadmap. But, what I find really fascinating, right, is that trust really is a tangible, value that the shopkeepers are bringing to this transaction. And it comes from the fact that they have a permanent base over there. They have family over there. It's not, again, I think sometimes we think of trust as being this loosey-goosey emotion. It's not. When things go wrong, the shopkeeper is over there to help them, right? In a country like India, which is rife with so much credit card fraud, so much card fraud, this sense of trust is actually something, if it can be unlocked to make payments, to do transactions for long tail, items, for accessing credit as a consumer, it really is kind of unmatchable in kind of the existing network and in terms of the kind of social scoring that goes into it. And I think MFIs again have gotten some of these elements right, and so I'm very inspired actually by what I'm hearing, the same like social circle and trust factor that goes into ensuring that MFIs don't see loans go down in these groups. I'm hearing similar elements repeated here, right? And that makes that's like super interesting to me.
Hafiq, Bangladesh is in many ways the starting point for the microfinance movement. Are you disrupting it in the same way that your other participants are? Inspired by it, but still disrupting it?
Yeah, I think you can call it like evolving it. So I was having dinner with this very inspiring, forward-looking banker who has been in banking in Bangladesh for 30 years. I've seen the entire journey of like MFIs and also Pikat, right? I think the main discussion point was that, in future, this network of super efficient, like unbeatable cost structure, like network of small shops can basically be stacked upon with all these new products, right? So if I give one example, Bikash is a very good example of that. Bikash is basically a Bangladeshi payments company, which their main priority is moving money from one city to another. Generally, that's a function done by banks, right? People go to bank to transfer money from one place to another. But they've built the entire network on top of this small shop network. And what we've seen is right now they do more than 10 million transactions a day, right? So this is a glimpse of what these small shop networks can do in terms of financial services. So the MFIs have started it by basically taking credit more like bottom up. I think Bikash has shown that how can you leverage like small shop network to bring one of the services. I think in the future, what you'll see is a big portfolio of retail banking or even SME banking built on top of this small shop network. So I don't know whether we call it disruption or anything, but I think it's more like evolving these models that we've seen in Bangladesh.
Evolution. We'll take that. Evolution for the better. You guys are all trying to build better systems that I think impact the everyday lives of millions of small shopkeepers from Brazil to Bangladesh. And what the insights I got from this conversation was not just the impact at the storekeeper level, but the massive potential to reach an underserved customer base that these stores are currently serving in markets that the banks clearly and even some of the MFIs are not touching. Exciting potential, huge promise, but I think still early days, if we were to be honest, right? Each of you are looking at 10xing and then 10xing that business. Let's end with talking about one challenge you're grappling with, or maybe an opportunity that you are particularly excited about. Twitter style, short, pick a challenge or something you're excited about. And let's go in order. Who wants to go first, actually? Yeah,
I can go first here.
Yeah,
I think that what excites me most here is the opportunity to offer services for the community. Maybe here in Brazil we are one step behind our peers, and we are the first step here to start serving the shopkeeper. But I really understand that there's a huge opportunity to offer other kind of services for the community that the shopkeepers serve. So it's a great vision what my peers here are bringing, and certainly is something that we would like to touch in the near future. So I would like to to say that I'm very excited with that.
Great. Bilal?
So I'll start by the challenge and then the opportunity, right? So I think we've been very lucky in being able to execute in our core market, which is Egypt. We've recently also grown internationally into Morocco, and we're planning even further international expansion. So I think it's a big challenge to replicate what we have done here into these other similar markets, right? Because we think of ourselves as a MENA kind of company, right? And definitely the other big challenge is to make sure that the culture is also translated into our colleagues across these markets. Now, from an opportunity, I think what we call logistics as a service, which is transforming the merchant into a delivery hub, is something super excited, because it fits into the core KPI we as a company solve for, which is increasing the bottom line of the merchant.
Right. Shruti?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge that I see is like a fragmentation, right? So our shops are small, and so even though they are actually 85% of like the outlet through which consumption happens, they have some of the worst cost structures to deal with, and that fragmentation and being able to gather all of them and leveraging that channel well is what the opportunity also is. We call our company ApnaKlub, right? Which is like our group. And the idea is actually really about collectivizing the fragmentation and giving back a great platform, both for the shopkeepers who can now buy better, get better credit, get better transport prices, but also the brands, right? Get visibility, understand how your products are doing in each pin code. You're not losing out on data or visibility or transparency because your players are too small to kind of work with ERP systems. And so that fragmentation honestly has been the biggest challenge that we have had to work with so far.
Okay. And Afif, you get the final word.
Yeah, I think in terms of challenge, there is no playbook that we can look at. So there is no Amazon or Alibaba who have scaled this model where we can learn from, but which again is exciting as well. In terms of opportunity, I think this can be the super highway of financial products, which is built on this unbeatable network of small shops, which will basically probably be a very new kind of bank that we have never seen before. Maybe, we'll go to the small shop next door and invest in the stock market someday, right? And I think it's very important because if you want to increase the earnings of the small shop, what's more important is that you're increasing their sales, but you also need to increase their profit margin, right? So all these financial products are a very high gross margin. If you add that to their portfolio, maybe they'll be in a position where they'll have enough profits to actually start scaling their business. So that's what it's at.
That's a great image to end on, the super highway of financial services that goes through smaller shops in Brazil and Egypt and India and Bangladesh. Great. The potential for these shopkeepers to be a major driver of prosperity in their communities seems to be quite vast. The four of you are demonstrating the promise and the power of innovation, but also you keep coming back to these ideas of responsible products, responsible pricing, trusted relationships, appropriate technology, and then embedding financial solutions to help these corner shops thrive. I'm inspired. I think the study that we just did shows how much of a vital part of the community these shops are. And with the work you're doing, we really hope that this becomes the super highway. I'd like to end by thanking you for joining me, and probably most importantly for the work you're doing to help these corner shops thrive. And to the audience today, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for your interest in this work. We hope to hear from you. If you have any questions about the study, Flourish, the amazing panelists we just had on, please email us at events@flourishventures.com. And we hope to see you again soon at a future forum like this. And I hope you go away inspired by the work that Afif, Shruti, Bilal, and Guilherme are doing. Thanks, everyone.